Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Pointy Not Sharp. Today we're covering off one of my favourite bayonets from my collection, and that is a New Zealand issued patent of 1907 bayonet. Now I spent quite a few years hunting down this one. They really don't pop up for sale very often, and when they do you have to jump on them. I've seen one other sell before I got this one, and it sold for far more than I was prepared to pay. But I'm very, very happy to have this one. If you're not familiar with the patent of 1907 bayonet, I've done quite a few videos on them already. They were made by the English for the short magazine Lee-Enfield rifle, the number 1 Mark III and number 1 Mark III Star rifles. So I've done quite a few videos on these already, but this is for this New Zealand one just here. Now these bayonets were made for New Zealand by the UK, and later I think a few by Australia as well. And in New Zealand service, they replaced the patent 1888 and patent 1903 bayonets. And while these bayonets saw their first debut in New Zealand service in the First World War, my understanding is the patent 1888s and 1903s were still in service at the time and saw a little bit of use as well. Now, the first iterations of this bayonet adopted by New Zealand, they were adopted pretty early on, so I don't know the exact year. They were initially released in 1908 in the UK, and I know that New Zealand got some very, very early ones because they still had the hook quillins attached before they were removed in later upgrades. So I think they only made those up until about 1912, so they definitely got some from the first few years of manufacture, so quite early in production. By the Second World War, New Zealand had started to phase these out. They were gradually being replaced. Well, the short magazine Lee-Enfield is being replaced in New Zealand service by the number 4 rifle. And with the number 4, they received a number of Mark II and Mark II Star bayonets. My understanding is 34,000 number 4 rifles were received in New Zealand service. I don't know how many rifles they had total, but I believe they still had quite a few of these in service during the Second World War. In terms of frogs, which is the piece of equipment that attaches the scabbard to the belt, they had a couple different kinds. So they had the standard patent 1908 canvas frog that the British were using. I imagine they probably came with the bayonets in like a package almost. But they also manufactured their own leather frogs indigenously, so in New Zealand. And I've only found them linked to the mounted rifles. So they might have only been for mounted infantry or cavalry, whatever you want to call their horseback infantry during the First World War. I found a couple of photos on them online. I don't have access to one of those frogs myself. The photos have been graciously supplied to me by the fella who does the bayonetsplus.com website. If you're not familiar with that website, jump on it, have a look. Fantastic sources of information, some very in-depth articles, and great information about particularly New Zealand bayonets, an area of bayonet collecting that is really skint on information. Now, all that aside, I'll jump into the markings, and that's where I really, really like these New Zealand bayonets. So first off, on the crossguard here, you'll have a serial number. Mine's on the right crossguard. I believe sometimes they were also on the left. I could be wrong. But from what I can tell, they start with a letter, and then mine has 5 numbers, but I've also seen these with only numbers and with less numbers. But if you've got a serial number on the crossguard like this, and no other markings on the crossguard like an Australian MD number, then it's likely going to be a New Zealand serial number. Now, the next giveaway that it's a New Zealand bayonet is going to be the big NZ stamped on the pommel, as you can see here. And it is quite common to have them not 100% struck. So as you can see, the base of the N hasn't been struck particularly well. I put that down to the fact that it's right next to the press button. I have seen these with regimental markings on the reverse side of the pommel as well. I wouldn't have a clue how to decipher them. That would require a bit more research. And finally, the only other markings, well, you'll also find all of your standard markings on them from your manufacturers, like this one here is Wilkinson Sword Company, patent 1907 bayonet, made in November 1918. Another reason I like this one, it was made in the last month of the First War. So you've got all your standard proof and government acceptance marks, bend test and all of those, and you'll have the same on the scabbard. This one here is a replacement scabbard. So it came with the bayonet. I don't know if it was replaced in service or by a collector later on, but this is an Australian scabbard from 1943. So made at the Orange Annex under control of the Lithgow Small Arms Factory. So as you can see here, you've got the standard Magravite 43 marking, Magravite being the Magravite belting company that supplied the leather to the Orange Annex. But you'll also have markings on the frogs. So back of the canvas frogs, you'll quite often find the NZ stamp in black, as well as possibly UK manufacturer markings. And on the back of the leather ones, on the back of the tab, you'll find unit markings and government acceptance marks as well, like NZ with a broad arrow in between it, or just an N/Z. And then I've also seen them with unit markings for the mounted rifles. For example, 5MR83 on this one here. I don't exactly know how to interpret that. The MR is obviously mounted rifles. 83, I'm assuming, is rifle number 83. I did a little bit of looking into the mounted rifles, not too deep. It looked like it was a brigade with 3 battalions. So the 5, I don't know if that's a company. It could be a battalion. I don't know, but if they've only got 3 battalions, maybe it's another mounted rifle battalion outside of that. Or maybe it's called the 5th. I don't know. There's more to it that I haven't got my head around. I'll have to do some more research. All that said, though, I'm actually heading down to New Zealand this coming weekend. So hopefully when I'm down there, I can find some more information, some cool New Zealand bayonets, and I'll check out all the antique shops and see if I can find a steal. But if you have any further information about these fantastic New Zealand bayonets, please comment below. I would love to hear from you. This is definitely one of my favourites from my collection. Thanks for watching.